This is Do It For A Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
I think you've always got a doubt in the back of your mind whether what you're doing is the right thing. But you need to back yourself and go, what I'm doing it for this reason. I'm doing it for my family, doing it to support my kids. And if you don't back yourself, then you'll probably always fail.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It For A Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back. I've got another guest here from Sydney, Australia. His name is Dale Heiler from Castle Hill Performance. Dale is an engine tuner. He has actually gotten himself involved in the Street Outlaws TV show. He is an EFI tuner and experienced in V8s and nitrous and big turbo stuff in the drag racing scene down in Australia. And I don't think there's a lot of standalone, and most of it's carbureted here in the U.S., and I think that's why he has been brought on as kind of the expert to do this sort of stuff in the U.S. But I'll let Dale tell his story. Dale, how are you doing today?
I'm not doing too bad. Yourself?
I'm doing very good. Go ahead and tell us about yourself and your background, how you got started.
Yeah, basically, as most rev heads started, it generally passed down from my dad. He was a crew chief on a couple of circuit racing with cars. So back in the late 70s, early 80s with Formula Fords, and they won the Formula Ford Championship in 1980. And then on from there, they had production cars. They had a Mazda RX-7, a couple of BMWs, and a few Alphas and things like that. So there was always a race car in the garage or in the shed. So I was always exposed to that side of the world. So my uncle had an engine reconditioning shop. So in the school holidays, I'd go down there and do a couple of weeks' work with him, pulling engines apart, putting engines back together, cleaning engines, sandblasting heads, just general stuff. And that sort of, I'd always like the cars. So, with those two things, it's sort of one thing led to another, and 20 years later, I'm still playing with them.
And so your dad was doing this as a part-time gig kind of on the weekends, and, he had a full-time job and just crew chiefed on the weekends, right?
Yep. Yeah, in Australia, motorsport's a bit different to the US. There's really only one professional category, and everything else is all part-time stuff. So, it was all, after work and weekends and all that sort of stuff. So it was, they actually did really well for not having a huge budget or anything like that. So
okay. And so Formula Ford, he was doing actual road racing stuff then, huh?
Yep, correct. Yeah, okay. Road racing.
Okay. And so what kind of spurred your involvement in this? So just kind of tinkering as a kid, with your uncle and your dad, and just kind of, did you go to school for it, or how did you get into the business of tuning cars?
So I go through the normal school process, and then in Australia, back when I was in school, you could leave in year 10 or go through to year 12. So I left in year 10, went to tech. I did some computer courses because back then computers were the in thing. And then the guy that my dad actually crew chief for, Stephen Brook, I was out at his place. He was looking after Formula Ford still. So he offered me a job. So I went out there and worked for him for a couple of years. So pretty much rebuilding cars, gearboxes, engines, just general maintenance on those cars. And I don't know if you've ever played with an open wheeler car, they are very high maintenance.
I have played with them.
So they're pretty much after every day at the track, you're pulling suspension off them, checking the rose joints, checking, changing gear ratios, doing all that general stuff. So there was a fair bit of work. They had one good customer who had 4 cars, and he would run hire days and things like that. So doing that sort of stuff, it took a lot of time. So that's sort of where I got the taste for it. And then about that same sort of time, my uncle actually had a drag car. Yeah, it was back in the day, it ran high nines, so it was just a small block on some nitrous. So it was a fairly competitive car in its class. And so I'd spend, during the week working on Formula Fords, and then on the weekend go to the drag strip with my uncle. So it was a pretty good time, really. There was a lot of I didn't spend too much time at home.
Okay, and so you that's how you got started. But like, when did you start being in the business of tuning cars? I mean, that's still your own stuff, right?
Well, after all that was going on, I bought my first car, which was not my first car, but my first performance car. So it was a Mazda RX-7, like a 1981 model. It had a 13V turbo in it. It had basically a Microtech computer, which was an Australian-made computer down here. And, you just start tinkering with that and learning how the EFI worked. And, this was back in the time when, so that was, what year was that? That would have been year 2000. So programmable EFI was very basic back in the day. So just playing with that, learning how it worked. And then, I was still paying a shop at that time to do the full power tuning and stuff on the car. And just as the years went on, I just learnt to do it myself. So and then I started doing it in mates' cars and so on and so on. And it just sort of evolved from there.
Okay, so you kind of learned on your own. You didn't go to any formal school for tuning?
No,
okay.
No. So, back then there wasn't really a huge, it was a bit of a black art still, I suppose you'd call it. The people that did know weren't telling anybody how to do anything, so you had to pretty much learn it yourself down here. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. Over sort of the course of 3 or 4 years, we sort of went on with that, and then the big, the all the factory cars coming out with EFI, and then being able to remap those ECUs that sort of opened the world up to a whole different ball game, really.
Right. The reverse engineering and the open source tuning, right?
Yep, correct. So that's sort of where I learnt to do it. And then in 2005, I bought obviously an LS powered car, which we call down here like a Holden Commodore, which is basically it's a Pontiac GTO, which you guys got, I think, in 04, 05. But we have them as a ute, so it's sort of like an El Camino. So I bought one of them. Yeah, it was pretty good. And then I thought, oh, well, you know what? Let's get into this whole remapping stuff. So we just bought a dyno. Thought, yep, this is good. We can start remapping these. So I bought a car, bought the gear to do it, and then spent the next 12 months really learning the ins and outs of the GM computer. And that's sort of these days is our core business, is GM.
Okay, and so you buying this dyno was as Castle Hill Performance?
Yep, back in the day it was Castle Hill Exhaust. My best mate's dad owned it. He let us put the dyno in the shop. It was, back then, the muffler repair business was fairly well flowing in Australia. Every car came out with a mild steel system on them and things.
And all rusted out.
Yeah, all rusted out. So, there'd be a time where you'd replace, 20 bolt-on systems a day. So, it was a fairly good business back in the day. So, so we bought a second-hand Dynamics dyno and then put that in the workshop. So that I'd just go down. At this time, I was working in the IT game. So I would go down after work and spend 5-6 hours down there every night, playing with cars, learning, what to do. So, obviously before we had a dyno, I was renting a dyno off another guy, doing the aftermarket ECU stuff. But the remap and the factory stuff's a whole different ball game. And back then there wasn't as much internet guidance on how to do it.
Right. You didn't have forums and all the how-tos on everything, right?
No, so you literally had to learn it all yourself, and that took a fair bit of time to, obviously you can slash and burn and hack it up and make it work, but to make it work properly was a fairly tedious task. Back then the software wasn't as good as what it is now. You couldn't just download a file and put it in the car and it would be pretty close. So we sort of had to. I spent a lot of time. I would have done probably 1,000 pulls on that car, just as a normally aspirated car, and then you put a camshaft in it, and then do another couple of 100 pulls, and twin turboed it. Another couple of 100 pulls.
So at this time, you had a day job still. You were doing
Correct.
IT work?
Yep, correct. So back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the IT industry in Australia, as it probably was in the US as well, was booming. So there was a lot of work. I already had the tech, already been to tech and done the courses and had the certificates to do it. So I went back into that. The money was good. The hours were reasonably good. So I did that for, I think, probably 8 years. Obviously swapped between a few jobs in that time, but that was sort of the main income at the time.
Okay, and you were also just tuning cars kind of on the side, in your own free time. Okay, both your own and other people's.
Yep, correct. So I'd leave the work at 5 and then head down the workshop, and if I had someone's car there to tune, I'd tune it, and and then come home after that. So it was fairly long hours really, but the money was good.
Yeah, right.
So you just do it, and by that time I've been playing with the aftermarket ECUs for sort of 7-8 years, so I had a fairly good understanding of how all of them worked. We're pretty blessed in Australia to have a huge array of aftermarket ECUs that are manufactured here. So
there's a love. There's a love for that kind of stuff down there, huh?
I actually can't work it out. Like the amount of top quality products that comes out of Australia is amazing. So we get exposed to a lot of good gear. So back then, the Autronics were a good thing. Motec, good thing, still a very good thing. On the cheaper end, you had Microtech, which was very basic computers. Haltech was just, they were big. They had the E6K back then, which was a good system for the time. There was a good array of stuff to work on. So it was, and also back then dynos as well. Not many people had them, and they were very expensive. So if you sort of had a dyno and you knew what was going on, you were in a pretty good step.
In one of the interviews that Reed did earlier, one of the guys in Australia said that dynos are actually required for inspections out there, right? So they're, I would say, a lot more common than they are here in the States, right? Is that not the case?
Yeah, they're... once again, it comes back to Australian manufacturing. We've got two of the top brands in the world. Dynos get manufactured here. So you've got Dyno Dynamics, which have been around for forever, and Mainline, which are... they've been around for a long time as well, but they've really come on leaps and bounds in the last 5-7 years. Mm-hmm. So getting access to a good quality dyno isn't hard at all. So there is a lot of them around, and councils can make life a little bit difficult with noise and things like that. So you've just got to be a little bit careful about how you use them and when you use them, and especially if you're near houses, etc., can make it a little bit difficult. Okay.
So tell us about your transition from working a full-time job to doing your, the car stuff as a full-time job. How did you transition out?
It was getting to the point where there was enough work to really stop doing the IT stuff. So by this time I'd started slowing down to be part-timing the IT gig, doing a couple of days a week there, and then going to the workshop for a couple of days a week. So I said to my fiance at the time, who's now my wife, well, I think we could probably make this go. So I started up my own company, and then I went down there and did all that stuff. And it was a pretty tough couple of years. It was probably maybe a little bit too early, too quick. About that time was when 2008, 2009.
Oh, really bad time to do it, huh?
Yeah, but it was when the whole internet tuning thing come online. So cheap tuning cables for GMs, people forums. Oh, you can just do this, you do that. So it was a lot of people in Sydney, especially, bought a laptop and a tuning cable and thought they knew how to tune a car. None of them had ever built an engine. None of them had ever pulled an engine out of a car. Most of them didn't even own a timing light. So the market was flat, and they would do tunes at half the price of everybody else. So it was a bit of a rough patch, and it was probably more the aftermarket side of it was what got us through that tough patch. So, and at that time, the exhaust shop was still running as an exhaust shop.
Okay.
Because there was still work for that.
And so your business was kind of like in the same building, but a separate actual entity?
Yep. I just rented. There was an office downstairs and an office upstairs, so I rented the office upstairs, and just invoiced him for every job I did, and things like that. So,
okay.
It was tough for those first couple of years, and it sort of, it picked up to the point where we were going okay. We didn't have a lot of money. We were doing it tough, and so we just thought, you know what, I'll close this down and just, and then I went full time for the exhaust shop. But at this sort of time, the exhaust business industry here was sort of slowing down because all the cars had been coming out with stainless steel exhausts, and they were lasting longer, and we were doing more and more performance work. So the exhaust shop side of it is really, it's probably 5% now of the core business.
It's okay. So you basically sold off your portion of the business, which was sharing a building with Castle Hills Exhaust, and now you are an employee to Castle Hills Performance, not
correct
owner anymore, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I just wound up my business, and just went full time for him. So it sort of works a bit better for both of us. So by this time I'd had my first daughter, so it was good just to every week you get this, you've got money coming in. It just made life a little bit simpler.
You didn't have to deal with actually running the business, which is an enormous time drain, right?
Yeah. That wasn't so bad because my mum was doing all my books and everything was all, I wasn't doing huge amounts of turnover, so it wasn't, that wasn't too much of a drama. But some weeks you would make good money, other weeks you wouldn't make much money at all. And when you've got a child, it comes in a lot easier when you've got you know exactly how much money you're going to get every week. Easier to budget, especially when the wife's not working. So it's everything sort of just added up, and it was just easier to go that way.
Okay, so you just have transitioned to something more stable and easier to deal with having a family, essentially.
Yep, correct.
Awesome.
Yep, it was just it made the the right the right decision at the right time, I suppose.
Okay, so we have a question we always ask is how location has played a role in your success. And so for you, you're now not bound to a shop. As a tuner, you can travel anywhere and tune, right?
Yep, correct. I try not to, Monday to Friday, I generally try and stay in Sydney and stay at the shop, and do the right thing by the shop and get all the work done there. And then on the weekends, if I need to travel somewhere, I travel and do what I need to do. Maybe every third or fourth week I'm interstate somewhere doing something for someone. So it works out fairly well.
Okay. And have you ever doubted yourself in, like you obviously got out of the ownership side. Have you ever doubted yourself in, like being an owner and then going back to just, working full time? How did you overcome the feeling of, like this isn't working and, let's keep moving forward in a different path?
I think you've always got a doubt in the back of your mind whether what you're doing is the right thing. But you need to back yourself and go, I'm doing it for this reason. I'm doing it for my family, doing it to support my kids. And if you don't back yourself, then you'll probably always fail. If you don't believe in yourself, then no one else is going to believe in you. So you sort of got to be a bit confident and just know, yep, I can do it. I can make this work. And that's sort of what I've believed the whole way along.
Okay, and so what's the worst experience you've had in this business? I mean, everybody's got a good one, huh?
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky. We don't have too many bad experiences. We've had the odd customer who's, one thing I worked out a long time ago is you can never please everybody. So you can try as hard as you like, but there's always going to be someone that isn't happy with what you've done. And we had one customer. It was just a Commodore, so LS1. We did the full exhaust, a cold air intake, a tune, and a few other bits and pieces to his car. And he wasn't. I don't know whether he wasn't happy with what we'd done, but he thought we damaged the paintwork on his car.
That one, huh?
Yeah. So he actually took us to court over it. Tried to claim $21,000 in damages to his car. And lucky we have a fairly good insurance company. We pay a premium to get the proper insurance. A lot of shops don't have the proper insurance. But we pay a premium to get the proper insurance. So we called the insurance company and said, this is going on. And the insurance company actually took over and appointed a paint professional to inspect the car and go through everything, and a private investigator to look at where he parks the car and so on and so on. It ended up being metallic fragments from the train line that he parks next to every day that was causing the problem. So, but that was probably the worst bit that... I'm pretty lucky Dave takes care of all that stuff, so I didn't have to actually deal with it, but we had to give statements to the insurance company and, so on and so on. So it was a fairly tedious process, and that's probably the worst thing. You've had the odd engine failure, but once again, that's what we pay the good money for the insurance company for, just to cover everything. And the insurance company covers it, and we may try and do the right thing by putting, a new engine back into the car.
So does your insurance cover like engine failures that you guys have built?
So they cover. So one of them was a bolt was left loose in the engine, and the bolt fell out and destroyed the engine. So they cover that as a basic stuff up.
Okay.
So they cover the cost of the parts. They don't cover your labour to pull it out and put it in, and so on and so on. So,
okay.
We've been pretty lucky. There's only been one case of that happening. Everyone makes mistakes, and I think it's how you handle the mistakes that separates the good shops from the bad shops.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
So we always try and do the right thing. Like that engine was a 40,000 k old engine, but we replaced it with a brand new engine, like brand new crate motor.
Okay.
So the customer got back better than what they had. So just with a couple of week delay in the middle.
So tell us something you got doing right now that has got you fired up. I mean, you're what's I think is pretty cool is you're tuning cars here in Oklahoma, huh?
Yep. So I just got back from there 3-4 weeks ago. That has all started from a bit of a joke on the internet, really. I was speaking to Dominator on Yellow Bullet Forum, as most people are probably aware of that forum if they're into cars. jokingly said, if you want to EFI your car, shoot me a message. And he did. So, those guys, they're real racers. They're not, everyone thinks that it's all scripted for the TV and all that sort of stuff, but it's not. It's all real deal stuff. And, I've been privileged to actually go to filming of a couple of episodes, and it's full on. Though it's tense. It's pretty competitive, and they don't want to lose. So, any advantage they can get to get them going quicker is a good thing. So he got in contact with me, and we come to a deal, and Haltech supplied the equipment, and we went over there and converted. I've personally done 2, so I did Dominator and Derek's car, and the Dung Beetle as well, just for something to do while we were there. That was actually pretty cool, that one. And yeah, it's all been pretty good fun, really.
Cool. And so you've worked with both Haltech, and Ben Strader, I know, is involved in some of that as well, correct?
Yep, correct. So Ben's actually got Doc's car there right now, putting the EFI on that. So, he's a pretty cool dude. He's very smart, very well respected in the industry, and rightly so. He's definitely knows what he's doing, and he's got it going on, that's for sure. Yeah,
and so it sounds like a lot of the Street Outlaws guys are all figuring out that EFI is the way to go on these things, huh?
Yeah, look, the amount of power that they're making and what they're trying to do, with the carburetor, it's just too hard. Like, most of them had a carburetor, a 7531 MSD box, and they were just pulling timing as the nitrous kits were coming on, just through the MSD. So, and they're spraying big kits. Some of them have got like 40 jets in their first kit, 36 in the second, and then 28 in the third. So they're spraying a lot of nitrous in those things. So it's literally, it's like trying to run the engine on an oxy torch. One wrong move and it's toast. So,
and so your experience, you kind of do a lot of that stuff in Australia. Like, that's more common, right?
Yeah, nitrous isn't huge down here just due to the cost. I think it's about $2 a pound over there, something like that for a thing. It's $10 a pound or $12 a pound over here. So, it's not huge, but there is a few guys running nitrous. But most of the stuff we do down here is turbo, just because it's cheaper than nitrous.
Right, that's what I do. Lots of turbo, but no nitrous.
Yeah, like we got a couple. We did one last week. Yeah, nitrous pro mod down here with the Haltech on it, and it had 2 stages on it. So there's a few cars. It's it'll get more popular.
Cool.
But I think the turbo is still the way to go. Hence why we just converted Dominator's car over to turbo. So
okay, and that's what you were doing 3 weeks ago up there.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yep. So he bought a motor off of another guy, put it in his car, run it with the nitrous for a while, and then it cracked a piston. Went and pulled it apart. It had like 100,000 longer rods in it, and the top ring was really close to the valve relief in the piston, and it just cracked through there. So he had to put a set of pistons in it anyway. So I'm like, well, why don't you just put some turbo pistons in it and let's go turbo? So, like Joe, he's a fabricator, so he said, yeah, all right. So Turbonetics come on board with some turbos, and we put them all on there. So he made up the manifolds and all the piping and everything like that. And then, when I got there, we set it up for 16 injectors and alcohol and all that sort of stuff, and made it all work.
Before we continue on, I wanted to take a second and tell everyone about My Shop Assist. If you own or work for a performance shop of any type, take some time to think about how organized and efficient your operation is. Our goal at Do It for a Living is to tell success stories in the industry and to educate you, the listener, on how to be successful in your business. My Shop Assist is a cloud-based shop management system developed to address the common shortcomings shops have. It enables you to track hours, pictures, notes, and even parts on every job at your shop. Manage your techs with the built-in calendar and assign tasks to them. The jobs can be exported to QuickBooks for accounting and billing. Customers can log in online and follow your progress on their car and digitally sign your work orders. MSA was designed to be simple to use and will help anyone from a one-man shop to the top-performing shops in our industry. Check out the system for free at myshopassist.com. So tell us about Castle Hill Performance. Like, how big is your shop, and do you guys rent it, or it's a building you guys own now?
It's not huge. Like, we can fit 7-8 cars in there overnight, so it's not a massive shop. Dave owns the building, so that's all. Yeah, everything in there is.
He's been doing it forever, huh?
Yeah. Okay. So he bought the building. He bought the business off his dad 10, 11 years ago now, and bought the building off his dad 4 years ago, thereabouts. So, it's all, everything in there is ours. So we've got a 4-wheel drive Dynamics dyno, a couple of lifts.
Okay.
4 of us work there, so 2 mechanics, myself and Dave, who Dave takes care of all the, the ordering, the books, the, booking the jobs in, et cetera, and I do all the tuning on the cars and do a little bit of mechanical when I need to. And Chris is one of the mechanics. He's a really good fabricator, so he does all the fabrication, aluminium, stainless, mild steel, whatever needs to be done. And Anthony's he's a mechanic, and he does all the general mechanical stuff.
Okay. And I remember you mentioned this when I was talking to you, that in Sydney it's very expensive, so it's hard to have a big shop, right? The land is very expensive.
Yeah, land is very expensive. Like, the median house price in Sydney at the moment is like $1.1 million. So, yeah, pretty much it's to buy land or a big size building in a prime area, it costs a lot of money. So it's sort of that trade-off of going to a prime area and have a smaller shop, or go into a not so prime area and have a bigger shop. So it's a bit of a catch-22, really.
Right. Okay. And so now you're not actually, owning the business anymore, but did you write a business plan when you started doing it on your own?
Not really. My main plan was just to obviously make as much money as I could. But we never really sat down and really did anything like that.
Okay, so you just kind of winged it as you had a good idea of what you were capable of doing, and just kind of grew it from there. Okay.
Yep, just went from there.
Okay. And you said there's 4 employees at your shop now.
Yep.
I mean, you're not involved in telling them what to do, but like when you were doing it yourself, did you find it hard to manage people, or was it always been just yourself?
No, it was just myself, so it wasn't too bad in that regards. But the 4 of us there, we get on pretty well. Like, we've known each other, me, Chris, and Dave. I actually knew Chris because I put an ECU and stuff in his RX-7 that he had probably 15 years ago. So we've all known each other for a long time. We get on pretty well. Obviously, you always have your little battles and your little arguments every now and again, but as most people would when you spend so much time together. So we've got, we've all worked each other out. We know how each of us work.
And you guys have pretty defined roles as well, right? I mean, you guys don't overlap work hardly ever, right? No,
not too bad. So, my biggest thing is I can't do my job until they've finished doing their job. So, sometimes I get a bit shirty because they taking a little bit too long to do something that should have been done a bit quicker or something like that. But 9 out of 10 times, we don't have any dramas. They get the job done in the time frame that they need to, and it all generally works fairly well.
Okay. And what's your guys' primary source of revenue? I mean, part sales, service, manufacturing, a little bit of everything?
Generally part sales and service. So, our core work is the LS platform. So, we do a huge amount of camshaft upgrades, exhaust intake tune packages, things like that. So, generally, supply and fit parts, dyno tuning, it's generally like over-the-counter sales is not too much of a of a big thing. We've got a little eBay store where we sell some basic things like braided clutch lines, braided clutch bleeding kits, just little things like that people want that aren't readily available. So we just make them up and put it and sell them on eBay. That's probably 85-90% is all sales and service in house.
Okay. And do you guys do any advertising and marketing for the business, or do you attend races with your own race cars?
Yeah, we've got a shop car which we're actually just getting ready to take out on the weekend. We do a little bit of magazine advertising now,
like print advertisement, right?
Print advertising, yep.
Okay.
In target magazines, like there's a Street Commodores magazine, a Street Fords magazine, so they're target ads to that to our core business, and then on with that flows on to some high performance imports and things like that we do, and we do a lot of Facebook advertising. That works really well when you get it set up right. You can generate a lot of business from the target ads on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So how many hours a week are you working now?
We generally do 8 to 5 most days. We try not to stay back and do overtime if we don't have to. Me and Dave have both got kids, so we like to get home to see our kids. Chris does a fair bit after hours and cash jobs and things like that. So he stays back and does all that whenever he feels like it. But most of the time we're generally 8 to 5, and try and schedule the work so that it's not banking up, if you know what I mean.
Right. Okay. And how did that change from when you were before you had a family? Were you working more hours?
Oh yeah, definitely. You would stay there and just do whatever you needed to do. You come home 10, 11 o'clock at night just because you're tinkering with the race car or tinkering with something like that. These days we sort of try and tinker with the race car during work hours when there's a bit of a gap and the hoist is free. Things definitely change after you have a family. You definitely want to get home.
Right. So nowadays you just find most of the time you're spent at the shop is doing actual work. When you had the shop as your own, did you find yourself having to spend a lot of time managing the business? Or you sounds like you said your mom was doing your books for you?
Yep. So she was doing the books and
so you had some support.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, my wife was pretty good at doing that sort of stuff as well. So if I needed her to do anything, she could do it, no dramas. But yeah, these days you definitely like to get home and spend the time with the kids, or if it's hot, jump in the pool and go for a swim.
Exactly.
We sort of cop a bit of flack because we don't get our race car out to the track very often, maybe a couple of times a year. Everyone's like, well, why don't you get it out more? We'll get it out more. I'm like, well, we just don't have time. We need to, you got to do the customers' cars first to get the money to play with the race car.
And then by then you're too tired to work on your own car or want to work on your own car.
Yep. So, like having a shop car, it costs a lot of money. Everyone thinks, you get the parts given to you, but it's not always the case. So you've got to get the customers' cars done first. So, if we can get the shop car to the track 3 times a year, that's pretty good. Right. Pretty good year, really.
So, do you find the pay justifies the time spent?
Oh, yeah, it does. Obviously, the more time you put in, the more money you make. So, we're fairly fortunate that we've got a good reputation, and we don't have to charge bottom dollar to get the work. We charge a fair price to give a good job. So we've always got plenty of work on. So there's definitely no problems in in making sure that the bills are all paid and everything. So it's pretty good.
And it's enjoyable work for you.
Yeah, obviously you go through your patches where you don't enjoy it, but 9 out of 10 times it's I enjoy what I do. It's there's always something different. It's not the same thing every day. We get a mix of Evos, WRXs, Japanese import, Skylines, GRs, Holden and Ford, so Commodores and Falcons. It's we get a good mix.
Very cool. Okay. And what is the primary tools you guys use for managing the business? Like in the States, we use QuickBooks, My Shop Assist. Do you have a person like a shop manager or clipboards or whiteboards? What do you guys do to keep it all straight?
So we use a software package called MYOB, which is an Australian version of QuickBooks, basically. So the bookkeeper can get in at any time and do what she needs to do there. And we run a simple diary with just all the bookings in the diary.
And that's a paper diary?
Yeah, paper diary.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a bit old school, but it's generally fairly easy because with the four of us, Dave takes all the bookings and puts them all in the diary. So when we need to see what's going on, we can just go in and have a quick look in the book and see what's happening for the day or what we need to do because everything's all written out.
Okay.
This car's getting this, and this, and so on. So it all sort of works out fairly well like that. It's a bit old school and a bit, MYOB can do the bookings and everything like that, but then you've got to get onto the computer to do it. Dave spends a lot of time answering emails and Facebook messages and things like that. It's probably one thing that a lot of people don't realise is when you've got a Facebook page, we've got about 15,000 followers or something on Facebook. The amount of messages and quoting you have to do through that is huge. Dave probably spends a good 3-4 hours a day answering emails and Facebook messages.
Wow. Okay.
So it's it takes a lot of time.
Okay. And so what's something you struggle with business and how do you deal with it?
I struggle sometimes dealing with difficult customers. I've got a bit of a short week, so if they come in with their tail up already and they're being a bit aggro, then I don't have any time for them. So that's my biggest struggle. I'm getting better at it, but that's the biggest thing. Dave's really good with dealing with the people, so he generally deals with 80 to 90% of the customers. So we've got a pretty good team and a pretty good general mix of people there that can pretty much deal with every situation when it needs to be dealt with.
Okay. And do you have a 1-year plan for the business, or like your involvement in it?
Yeah. Look, we're really trying to branch out into doing things like diesel remapping because I don't know if it's like in the US, but everything over here is heading the diesel way. So all our equipment for that actually should arrive today. So we're aiming to branch out into that market because the Holden and Ford market's going to slowly start to die off because the manufacturing is going to cease in Australia in a couple of years' time. So that's sort of the direction that we're heading. It's probably really the way of the future with a lot more cars coming out with that. And obviously, once you've got that equipment, A, it's very expensive, but B, you can do a lot of cars with it.
Okay.
So,
and do you have a 5-year plan for the business?
Well, a 5-year plan's a little bit difficult at the moment. There's the whole area that we're in is going through like a rezoning. They've just put a new train line in, and the state government's got plans to rezone everything and do all that. So yeah, it sort of affects both my house and the workshop because I live very close to work. So the house is getting rezoned to put 12 stories of high-rise on top of it.
So make them pay you top dollar for it then, right?
Yeah, obviously they pay you a good amount of money to get out of your house. But the workshop's going to get rezoned as well. So the 5-year plan, depending on what happens there, will probably include a larger workshop.
Okay. Just further outside of the city, more than likely.
Yeah, the problem with the area that we're in is a very good area. There's not a lot of dyno shops around. There's 2 of us within sort of a kilometre of each other.
Okay.
But he doesn't really affect anything that we do. So it's a good area. It's in a good part of town. It's close to a very big business park. So there's a lot of professional workers in there that have the target car that we work on. So it makes it very easy to get that work because it's our target. So we don't really want to move too far, but it all comes back to what's going to happen with the rezoning. Is it actually going to change, or is it not, or what? So it sort of makes it a bit difficult to really plan on what's going to happen in 5 years.
So you're paying attention to what the city's doing and how it affects your business.
Oh, 100%. Because it's all affecting my personal life because we're going to have to move out of our house. So, we've really just got to keep an eye. And like Sydney's getting very large and expanding at a rapid rate. So,
when I was there, I found it very hard to get around. It seemed like there were not very good highway system, right?
No, the road network is terrible. Everything is terrible. Public transport is terrible. So then putting this train line in, it is a good thing in one way, but it's a bad thing in another because everything's going to change. So, I've pretty much lived in this house I grew up here, so my parents built it nearly 40 years ago. So it's sort of, it'll be sad to see it knocked down, but life goes on.
Right.
But it's just, it's in interesting times at the moment, just sort of the way everything's going. Definitely the 5-year plan is to definitely get a bigger shop.
Okay. So we like to take action on Do It for a Living. Can you suggest an action item for our listeners that they can do to improve their situation?
Yeah, look, I really think you need to believe in yourself and believe that you can do it. Because if you believe in yourself that you can do the job, then you'll be able to do it. If you don't believe in yourself, then you'll always fail.
Okay, cool. Okay, and so before we move on to the quick answer questions, I just wanted to remind everybody that we have a Essentials of Operating a Shop class. EFI University is hosting a new class called Essentials of Operating a Shop. If you're interested in learning how to run your shop more efficiently, this class is for you. For details and to find a class near you, go to EFI101.com and look for the Essentials of Operating a Shop class. Our next class is being held in Orlando, Florida on April 16th, followed by Phoenix, Arizona on April 23rd. Be sure to use the coupon code DIFAL for $50 off when you sign up. Okay, so moving on to the quick answer questions here. Tell us about a game-changing product that you've seen in the last year.
I think it would be the Plex in-cylinder pressure sensor.
I saw that. It looks super cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to get a hold of one of them. And I've seen the stuff that Ben Straight has been doing with the in-cylinder pressure. And it's like, this is definitely the way of the future.
And Ben was not using a Plex one, but it was a similar system, right?
Yeah, correct. They had one it was on an engine dyno that he was using at another shop. I spoke to him in detail about that, and he's just said it's definitely the way to go. And obviously it's not something that you'd use on every car, but high horsepower, big boost, so on. It'd be probably the information that you would get from it would be so huge that you could. It would definitely pay for itself in not too long, I would imagine.
Do you know how much the Plex device costed?
I haven't even looked into it yet, but I imagine it would be somewhere around the $10,000 mark.
Okay, so still fairly expensive, but that technology is making its way into acquirable.
Yeah, like 10 years ago, like F1 teams were the only people that had that stuff. So, that's the way it goes. Like when we first started doing all this, an air fuel meter was $4,000 or $5,000 for
the Motec ones. I remember that too.
Yeah, and then the Autronic one that was for the B model with the NTK sensor was like $3,500. So, now you can get a decent one for $400. Yeah. So, obviously as the technology changes, it'll get cheaper.
Okay, and what's a software program you guys use daily?
MYOB definitely is what we use every day.
Do you have a favorite app on a phone or anything that you use?
Generally just a calculator. But all these late model ECUs they're all just mathematical equations. So, generally the calculator gets used at least a dozen times a day.
Okay. And what's your favorite shop tool?
Definitely my Dyno Dynamics 4-wheel drive dyno. Without that, we'd be stuffed.
And so you've
my timing light.
You've actually had a couple of them. So you said you started with a 2-wheel drive one. Did you upgrade it to a 4-wheel, or did you buy a new one?
No, I had two 2-wheel drives. I had a really old one, like one that was made in 1991 or something like that. It was one of the first ones. We had that for about 6 years. Then we traded that on a new 2-wheel drive. And then we bought a second-hand four-wheel drive, and then so that's what we've got now.
Okay.
It was very low use, so we grabbed that and upgraded it to the latest software and everything, and that's what we got now.
Okay. And what are you driving right now?
I've got a Holden Colorado, so it's a four-wheel drive turbo diesel ute.
All right.
Sort of like a Tundra, I suppose. I think you actually get the Colorados over there now.
Yeah, if it's a Toyota, we get it's a Tacoma. That's the smaller pickup truck. Uh-huh.
Probably similar size to that, but it's a 2.8 diesel thing.
And have you modified it yet?
Yeah, of course. We did a 3-inch turbo back on it from the day after I got it, and then we can remap the standard ECU in that, so it's had a remap. It makes about 160 kilowatts at the wheels. Standard it made 95, so
so you bumped it up a bunch.
It goes a fair bit better.
Okay. Okay, so let's close this thing out here. What do you think the future of automotive performance is going to be?
I think diesel and direct injection are going to be the two things that are going to take off. You're going to get a lot more high performance diesel cars. The engine technology in diesels these days is getting pretty good. So, and the direct injection petrol stuff is definitely going to take over. So, both of them open a few different challenges in basically remapping them. So, making it more difficult for the petrol stuff with the aftermarket ECUs. But I think diesel is probably going to be the way of the future.
Yeah, and I think Audi has really shown that you can race with a diesel race engine too.
Yeah, definitely. And they're currently more expensive and everything like that. But that's all going to change as more and more manufacturers go to like diesel only. It'll definitely change it. And, manufacturers like Toyota that offer a petrol and a diesel version of the same car. Mm-hmm. I think they'll just drop the petrol version. So that when their stocks run out of the petrol engines, it'll all just become diesel.
Okay. And how do we connect with you and your company?
Facebook's probably the easiest thing. Castle Hill Performance. We get on there pretty much every day and updates of what's going on and what we've been up to, and dyno graphs and things like that. So that's all there, ready to go.
Cool. Well, Dale, I want to thank you for taking some time to talk with us and share your story. It was really a pleasure to listen to.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app,